So my name is Larissa Diana Fuhrmann. I work as a curator and as a peace researcher at the moment at the Peace Research Institute in Frankfurt. I came to Sudan in 2009 for the first time. I was a visiting student at Khartoum University. I was doing African and Islamic studies with a focus on art. It was a very political campus. And the interesting thing was groups of people would create a circle and then start reciting poetry, revolutionary poetry. And I was incredibly inspired by how politicized people were, obviously out of necessity, but also how they were like connecting cultural resistance, artistic resistance to what was going on around them. And I learned a lot in that time, not just at the university itself, but just all around the capital city. It's a huge city, incredibly diverse. At that time, it was before the succession of the South. So you have more than 100 languages in the country. And because there is so little known about Sudan abroad, I had this incredible opportunity of engaging with a lot of communities, people, go to galleries that were very few at the time, but then started growing bigger later. And so then I came back in 2013 after my master's and did skateboarding workshops for the Goethe Institute Sudan. And this then grew into a bigger urban arts project, and I just couldn't leave for years. I was like invited in this incredible community of artists, and I had the chance to work with them. And I learned from them how art can be used as a tool of producing knowledge to affect people, to get people's attention. I started working more and more in this field. In 2016, Mayada Adil, who's a designer, fashion designer, and a doctor and a human rights activist who's now based in Paris, she had talked to Khalid Albaih, who had this idea of creating a book about Sudan and giving people a mental image and giving people just more to think about in terms of what Sudan is. Because I think even within the country, there's limited knowledge of like the vast history and the knowledge that is there in the country and the artistic production, but also abroad, there's barely anything known, especially since like the last 30 years of the dictatorship of Omar al-Bashir, the country was very isolated. So Khalid had this idea of like growing up in the diaspora and always having to explain, what is Sudan? Like, who is Sudanese? What are the stories in Sudan? How does it look like? And so he said, let's do this book. Let's meet together with artists. Like, let's have a conversation with people of what they want to tell and how they can show their perspective on Sudan. So since I was working at the Goethe Institute, we did a first workshop there in January 2017. We had a call for applications, maybe 30 artists and creatives came, but not just artists, but like there was a dentist. There were people who had stories to tell, and they partnered up very often with some other artists who were then in the group and started to dig into their history. And I remember that one of them, actually the dentist, was saying, but Khalid, like, what should I tell? And he said, what do you want people to know about Sudan? Or when you meet them, what kind of image do you want to give them? So she actually called her grandmother and then had a conversation with her about her life. And that actually became her chapter in the book. During the workshop, it was really interesting because people were like also talking to historians who were with us at the workshop, and we're calling family members and we're going through archives. And then we had kind of an idea for how the first book could look like. And this wonderful collective, Lokale, came together and agreed to do the design of the book. Trilingual, German, English, Arabic. And it had all these different visuals and stories, and we needed to figure out how to put this together in a publication. We had our first book launch, which was at Sevi Contemporary in Berlin. Rahiem was there, one of the painters in the book. Yusuf Alamin was there, who does incredible comics, kind of manga style as well. And we had a conversation about like the art scene at the time. And it was a very particular moment in Sudanese history because the revolution had just happened. And there was this uproar, like this visibility of art. And within the country and also outside, Sudanese artists had not received that much recognition, I think. So it was a a moment where we could like come together and like celebrate this heritage. And while there was also like June 3rd massacre had happened just before our launch, so while there was like a lot of celebration, there was also a lot of grief. And I think this is part of like the book as well. While we're trying to celebrate, we're also grieving. We're retelling history in all its facets. So after that, we went to Khartoum and we had our second launch. And I remember just like running around the whole night. We had a panel discussion and like some screening on the rooftop, and a lot of the parents of the artists came and family members. And it was an incredible evening because it was very rare that we all were in one place, and now even more. So it's kind of bittersweet to remember it because since the outbreak of the war, everything has changed. So after the launch at the House of Heritage, we thought this cannot be the end. Like, this is a project, it will continue. This was not a one-time publication, but we wanted to travel. And we were invited here to London with the mosaic rooms, but the pandemic hit. Took quite a while until we thought, okay, we should meet again and work on a second book. I was in Khartoum. We were about to meet for the workshop. Khalid was supposed to fly in, and then the military coup happened. So again, we couldn't meet physically because of the situation. So we started meeting digitally with everything that was happening in Sudan. Also, not everyone was in Khartoum. Some of the artists were from the diaspora or were in exile for many reasons. So we worked on new chapters. There was incredible ideas coming up, and we were just like looking for another publisher to work with and extend the project. And then the war broke out on April 15th, 2023. And that again, obviously put a halt to everything, not just to the book project, but to everyone's life. Especially those in Khartoum or in Sudan, but also those abroad. And so it took us a few months to kind of get together again and think about continuing the project. Because also the political situation was so much in motion over the now nearly 10 years that we've been working on the project, that there was always new stories to tell, right? There was stories to tell from like 2,500 years back, but there was stories to tell from yesterday. When Almas Foundation actually said that they're going to dedicate a whole year to Sudanese artists, that was an incredible moment for us to realize there is a tension. While there was such a lack of support from any institution, actually, in terms of humanitarian aid, but also like all the institutions were struggling, I guess, to have access, and like there's many reasons why things failed. And I guess that's another conversation. But our goal was then to recoup, get people together again in their different geographies, since most of them were traveling to other countries. Those who managed to flee were like Egypt and Kenya and Ethiopia, in United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, in different places. So we said, okay, from the last chapters we worked on, from the last like digital workshop, what do we have? And so we saw that we had around 12, 13 new chapters, which like was incredible and kind of extended what we had done before. And since the last book was also sold out, and because the pandemic hit, we didn't have the chance to travel with it as much as we wanted to and have more people see it, we said, okay, we'll put the two books together. So Khalid said, this is book 1.5. It's not book 2. We really like that. So yeah, the book is volume 1.5. So it brings together most of the chapters of the old book, but it also extends it with 12 incredible new chapters. And some of the artists who took part in the first book also said, I really like my chapter, but it's like many years down the line now and I want to change something. So some visuals were changed, some texts were changed. So while the idea and the concept of the book is the same, it shows like the development of the artists themselves, but also of like the project, which will hopefully continue. So now we're trying to launch the book in different places. We've just come back from Doha, Qatar. One of the partners of this book project is Georgetown University in Qatar, and especially Suzy Mirani from the Center of International and Regional Studies. She's one of the editors of the book. And we brought a lot of the original artworks that had kind of slept in my house for a few years, and brought some new artworks from the new chapters, and also printed some like photography and graphic design. And it was an incredible event because a lot of the community came together. Doha has a huge Sudanese community. Several of the artists from the book came. Khalid was there, Rahiem Shadad was there. So these are the two co-curators. Khalid Albaih, the one who had the idea for the book, political cartoonist, nowadays based between Qatar and Oslo. And then Rahiem Shadad, a wonderful curator from Sudan who used to have his own gallery in Khartoum too, just before the war. So the three of us conceptualized how the book could become an exhibition and be shown in a space. And Al Hosh Gallery was quite a big space where we tried to play with the surrounding, and we had a bigger Sudanese band playing. We had a Sit al Shai who was making tea and coffee for people, Sudanese food. It was kind of a community event, celebration, in a moment where we're all aware of how dramatic the situation is, with Sudan being the most horrific humanitarian crisis at the moment that does not get enough attention at all from the world. But also it's very important to have these moments where we see Sudan also beyond the war, where we see the history, where we understand where the history comes from, what has happened in the past, not just 100 years, but even before that. There's a history before colonialism that needs to be told. And I think that is what the artists are trying to do, to bring together all these stories. So then after showing the work in Doha, now we're here in London and showing the work at Almas Foundation. And it's an honor to be here. It's wonderful to have another space to conceptualize this work. Rahiem, Khalid, and me would love to be here together, but yeah, there's many projects going on. So I'm the one who has the honor to represent the project. And then yesterday, we already had a lot of people coming here after the opening this week, with conversations about the pieces, with conversations about the relevance of art in retelling history. And you can see the space behind me, and you can still come here until mid-December to see the exhibition. And I think what is so important for me to tell about the works is, especially in a time now where knowledge and memory is erased, cultural heritage is erased, the museums are being destroyed, galleries are being destroyed, artist studios are being destroyed. We're trying to collect memory. We're trying to bring it together. We're trying to create archives of knowledge and distribute it within the Sudanese community, but also globally. And we hope that people will feel affected by it, understand that Sudan has more than 2,000 years of artistic production as well. And it has more pyramids than Egypt has, but has never gotten the attention for its long history. And Sudanese artists for such a long time have shown how poetry, painting, pottery, so many crafts are so relevant for communities and their endurance in writing history. For me, as someone who works as a curator and also as a peace researcher, I think we can bring together different forms of knowledge on a particular context, and especially also in the context of political violence. Well, we as researchers, we do analytical work and we try and understand facts and figures of a particular context, just like the war in Sudan. But artists produce equally knowledge that is incredibly important and that is effective. And I think that is where the power lies, in bringing different forms of knowledge together and getting people involved. Because I think we can all understand that it's not just about Sudan, it's not just about the 45 million people who have been affected by this inside the country and the millions outside of it, but also what it means to the world if something like this happens and we look away. And this is where I think the power of the art lies, in making people see and making people feel and making people understand. And I hope that this project and the book, the incredible work that the artists do, will travel around the world and make people see Sudan in its diverse facets and just beyond what is just happening now in terms of a humanitarian crisis.